When the stars are out of sight and out of mind in daylight, things don't get any better for flatwits. Having a universe rotate around their space biscuit like a flat-earth version of geocentrism would present the obvious problem of the whole surface changing between night and day at the same time. Clearly this doesn't happen, as it's always daytime for half its area and night for half its area. This perplexed flat-earths, and they devoted their finest minds to solving this problem.
Blah 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 blah. Finished!
What they came up with, in the form of yet another ill-considered ad hoc brain fart, was this. In their fantasy universe, the sun flies around above the Earth in a circle every day. Whilst the rest of the world laughed, flat-earths smugly thought they had this science business in the bag. They were then informed of the obvious problem with this idea, namely that if the sun is above a flat Earth all the time, it would be daylight all the time, and the sun would be visible 24 hours a day from every location on Earth. This perplexed flat-earths, and they devoted their finest minds to solving this problem. Rather than admit their stupidity, they doubled down. What they came up with was this. The sun behaving like a spotlight. This happens because of reasons. Here we have the flat-earth sun flying around above the Earth. It's an equinox. At each of the 2 equinoxes per year, the sun skims the horizon at the poles and is directly overhead the equator. On the flat Earth, the same must apply, so the sun is directly above their equator, and night and day are of nearly equal length. So what flat-earths are trying to say is that a single light source flying around 3,000 miles above Earth somehow illuminates half of the world. And the shape of the illuminated area has to change every day as the seasons drift. But let's come back to that another time. We're already getting a whiff, more of a stench, that flat-earths can't tell night from day any more than they can tell their arse from their elbow. So what do the transitions between night and day look like at the equinoxes on a giant space pizza? An observer on the equator will still see the sun pass directly overhead at solar noon, so the sun must be over the equator. This means observers on the flat Earth have to observe the sun rising directly northeast. It would appear to rise from a more northerly direction the further south you go, and tend towards a more easterly direction the further north you go, but would never rise in the east. Similarly, when the sun sets, an observer on the equator of the flat Earth would see it set directly northwest, setting on a more northerly heading the further south you go, and a more westerly heading the further north you go. It would never set due west. You'll be unsurprised to hear that reality disagrees. What actually happens at the equinoxes is that all observers at all latitudes see the sun rise due east and set due west, geographically speaking, not magnetically. Flat-earths have 3 choices at this point. They can accept reality and that their idea simply doesn't work, or they can deny reality and continue living in their little fantasy, or they can detail a mechanism by which equatorial observers see the sun a full 45 degrees off where it would actually be in their world, and that explains why any such mechanism would cause a deviation elsewhere that is a function of the observer's latitude, despite Earth's atmosphere being a homogeneous mix of gases that has no idea where it is. They will of course go for option 2. Having done this, we can expect them to adopt the other flat-earth stalwart, make up an ad hoc answer, and pretend that that explains everything with no further investigation being necessary, because reasons. A favourite excuse for things in the sky not being where they should be is refraction. In this case, that would not only demonstrate that flat-earths don't know what refraction actually is, but that they expect refraction to be affected by the observer's latitude rather than by any fundamental properties of Earth's atmosphere. For everyone to see the sun rise in the east on a flat Earth, we re-encounter a familiar problem. The sun would have to be in multiple places at the same time for observers up and down the world. And of course, people on the other side of the world will be watching the sun set and will face the same damned problem. All of this whilst the equatorial flat-earth in the hat says the sun is directly overhead. Since the sun isn't and never can be in multiple places at the same time, the presence of another simple and utterly irreconcilable paradox leads us to the only sensible conclusion, that the notion of us living on a giant frisbee is bollocks.